Welcome back to Pokemon episode summaries. Today, I'll be doing episode 151, Tunnel Vision. The episode begins with Ash and the gang continuing towards Goldenrod City, but on the way, Brock reads that they'll have to pass through the Onyx Tunnel to get there, and this was essentially, you guessed it, a tunnel filled entirely with Onyx. Misty worriedly asks if there was another way they could go, not wanting to encounter the Onyx, but Brock states that this was the quickest way, so it was the easiest way to go. Ash then reassures Misty that they would be okay, calming her worries by stating that he had Squirtle to deal with any Onyx, and Squirtle were rock types, so they'd be weak to all of Squirtle's attacks. However, Misty then reminded Ash that Squirtle was gone with the Squirtle Squad, and clarified that she was simply worried about the number of Onyx there. She knew that water Pokemon would do totally fine against them. I mean, she was a water type trainer. She had plenty of water types that could do the job. There just may have been too many Onyx. Brock assures Misty that her water Pokemon would probably do just fine, as he recommends that they stop for the night as it was getting dark. Unbeknownst to Ash and the gang, they were being tailed by Jigglypuff, and unbeknownst to Jigglypuff, it was being tailed by Snubbull, as it wanted to find Meowth. Why was it tailing Ash and the gang then? Because Team Rocket were always nearby Ash and the gang, and Team Rocket actually were just about to enter the Onyx Tunnel themselves. Meowth was scared of the Onyx, so he wanted to take the longer mountain route instead, but just as Brock had said, James clarified that the Onyx Tunnel was the shortest way to the next town. Because of this, Meowth reluctantly followed Jesse and James into Onyx Tunnel. Right as Team Rocket ignorantly questioned why the cave was so quiet when there was said to be Onyx in there, the Onyx finally revealed themselves, 3 of them to be specific. James tries to stop the Onyx in fear that they were going to do something, so he sends out his Victory Bell, which, of course, just eats him as usual. But once it stops, he orders Victory Bell to use Razor Leaf, assuming a Grass type would obviously have the type advantage, but the leaves seem to do nothing against Onyx. The Onyx then retaliate by bashing their heads against the wall, causing the cave to begin to crumble, and sending various rocks tumbling on Team Rocket. Team Rocket are narrowly able to avoid these rocks, as Jessie sends out her Arbok, only for the Onyx to use Bind and trap Arbok inside of it. This leads Jesse to then throw in Meowth, much to his dismay, as he was frightened of the Onyx, and Meowth tries his best to attack, but his Fury Swipes do nothing, and his claws simply break against Onyx's hard body. The Onyx then continue to bash their heads against the cave walls, causing even more rocks to fall, so Team Rocket decides to flee, and take a moment to catch their breath as they finally escape the cave. Although they had to walk backwards, so they made no progress towards the next town. Jesse and James remark how if they were going to beat the Onyx, then they needed Pokemon with an actual genuine type advantage, such as water Pokemon, leading them to remember that Misty had water Pokemon, so they decide to try and steal Misty's Pokemon. That's right, not Pikachu for once. As Team Rocket happily declare their plan, Wobbuffet forcibly pops out of his Pokeball, much like Psyduck, to join them, and this pisses Jessie off as she simply recalls him into his Pokeball. Meanwhile, Ash and the gang were relaxing by a river in preparation for their trek into Onyx Tunnel for the day. Ash was watching his face, while Misty was watching Togepi's, and Misty was also talking to Psyduck, complaining about how it was rubbing its head super loudly, like you could literally hear Psyduck scratching its head, that's how loud it was. But can you blame it? It obviously constantly had a headache. As for Brock, he was doing his stretches and exercises with his Pineco. And when Brock asked Pineco if he was enjoying himself, Pineco promptly responded by exploding with happiness, covering Brock in soot. Just then, Ash and the gang's preparations are interrupted as Ash and Pikachu spot a Snubbull and notice the ribbons on it, which reminds them that it was Miss Much Money's Snubbull, not just a random Snubbull. They question what the fuck the Snubbull was doing out this far, when it suddenly runs off before they could attempt to question it, leading Ash and the gang to follow. Eventually, they lose track of her though, and instead just encounter Jigglypuff. Ash and the gang immediately try and turn around and leave, but Jigglypuff was too quick, as it was really eager to sing. It had been a long time, so it hops onto a tree stump and begins singing, putting Ash and the gang to sleep, as Ash says that they were taking their afternoon nap a little early. Haha, so funny. However, Jigglypuff doesn't just put Ash and the gang to sleep, no, it also puts Jesse, James, and Meowth to sleep, as they were nearby Ash and the gang spying on them, plotting to take Misty's water Pokemon. Jigglypuff also put the Snubbull to sleep as well, as it revealed it had wandered off to directly behind Team Rocket, as it was about to bite on Meowth's tail before falling asleep, so it had finally found them, only to fall asleep. God damn it. Unfortunately for Snubbull, by the time it wakes up, Team Rocket had already woken up, and had since left. Snubbull proceeded to search for Team Rocket yet again, sniffing around until it came across a pond. It saw its reflection in the clear water, and immediately became pissed off as it saw that Jigglypuff had scribbled on its face, just as it did to anyone who fell asleep to its song. Snubbull was obviously pissed off, because it was too extravagant to have its beauty ruined by some marker, and went off to go find whoever committed this travesty to her face, not knowing that it was Jigglypuff. She eventually came across Jigglypuff, though, who was currently scribbling on a sleeping Pidgey, indicating that Jigglypuff had tried singing again and put the Pidgey to sleep. Once Snubbull caught Jigglypuff in its act of scribbling, she fights Jigglypuff and steals its marker as revenge, and escapes away into the distance, leaving Jigglypuff depressed as fuck, now without its microphone or marker for that matter. Meanwhile, Ash and the gang had woken up at this point, and had just washed in the river again to clean off their faces, with Misty commenting that Ash's mom would be happy that they were washing their face twice a day. Misty's comments are then cut off though, as Ash and the gang walk and stumble upon Jigglypuff. They immediately try to run away, in fear that Jigglypuff is going to put them to sleep again. However, Brock then realizes that the Jigglypuff looks sad as fuck, and further realized that Jigglypuff didn't have its microphone. Ash and the gang, being the kind souls that they were, decide to help Jigglypuff look for its microphone, much to its delight. Now, I don't know why they just wouldn't have left Jigglypuff high and dry here, then we could have finally ended the Jigglypuff subplot. It's been going on for way too long. Meanwhile, Team Rocket had since cleaned the scribbles off of their faces and were fuming mad at Jigglypuff for ruining their plan, as they were just about to come out of the bushes and swipe Misty's Pokémon before Jigglypuff showed up. As revenge, Jessie suggested that they dig a hole to trap Jigglypuff in, stating that they could capture Misty in it as well if she came by. However, James finally admitted that digging holes never really seemed to work out for them. However, Jessie rebutted by pulling out their new machine, a shovel combined with a pogo stick. Did you think it would be another mech? No. Though James was still skeptical that the whole plan would work, he decided to let Jessie dig if she wanted to, as she clearly wanted to use her new tool, and at least he didn't have to help dig. As Jessie was digging, though, Snubbull showed up. It had finally found them, and she took the opportunity to sneak up behind Meowth and bite on his tail, causing him to scream in pain. Jessie instantly yanks Snubbull off of Meowth's tail in order to save him, and recognizes it as Madame Muchmoney's Snubbull. James questions why the fuck it was following them, with Jessie stating her assumption that Snubbull was likely in love with Meowth. Jessie stating she knew this because she knew all about love. Yeah, sure you did. But I mean, Jessie was right though, as Snubbull proceeded to look at Meowth with loving eyes, much to Meowth's dismay, as he didn't want an abusive relationship where his tail was constantly getting eaten. James then suggested that Team Rocket give Snubbull to Giovanni, since Snubbull must have been pretty valuable since it was owned by a rich lady. However, Jessie rebutted this, stating how she thought Snubbull was too beautiful to be owned by a man, and instead should be owned by someone like her, adding that the reason why she wanted Snubbull was so that she could become more popular, explaining that if people saw her and Snubbull together, they would be so enamored by their combined beauty, like they were with Misty and her Togepi. Essentially, Jessie was jealous of everyone thinking that Misty and Togepi were so cute together, and she wanted to prove that she could be even cuter if she had a Pokemon like that with her. Meowth then angrily jumped in, claiming that he didn't want Snubbull to stick around, because Snubbull would just fucking try and injure him all day by biting his tail. Jessie simply told Meowth to quit his fucking whining, though did assure him that she would try her best to keep Snubbull away from his tail, so that way she wouldn't damage her teeth and make her ugly. Before Meowth responded, Wobbuffet then popped out its Pokeball uncontrollably, pissing Jessie off. Why the fuck did it do this? No reason, it just felt like interrupting. Anyways, back to what was actually going on. Meowth responded to Jessie by stating that it was either him or Snubbull. If Jessie really loved Snubbull that much, then he would fucking go, as obviously Team Rocket didn't need him anymore, if they were willing to put his safety at risk. Meowth expected this guilt trip to work on Jessie and James, but instead, they simply just told him, okay prick, go ahead and leave, we don't care. Even though James likely just went along with whatever Jessie wanted to do, not wanting to piss her off. Regardless, Meowth was still absolutely crushed by this, and walked off, keeping his promise that he would leave if Snubbull stayed. With Meowth gone, Team Rocket continued digging, and eventually started to spy on Ash and the gang, waiting for them to fall into their trap. Speaking of Ash and the gang, they had in fact stumbled upon Team Rocket's trap, which was a basket of fruit. Essentially, they planned for the hungry Ash and the gang to find the basket of fruit and then fall into the hole, and Ash was about to do this, as he suggested that they go check it out. However, Misty and Brock were wiser, probably remembering when Team Rocket had tried this exact fruit trap back right before the Indigo League on that one guy in his Marowak. Ash eventually agreed with Brock and Misty, and they decided not to go and check out the fruit. However, Jigglypuff, who was still with them, trudged ahead anyways, seeing it as the only path forward to go find its microphone, so as a result, it triggered the trap and fell into the hole. Really, Jigglypuff falling into the hole was one of the parts of Team Rocket's plan anyways. Sure, they mainly wanted Misty's Mons, but they did want revenge on Jigglypuff, so they should have been somewhat happy with this. Anyways, Ash quickly has his Bulbasaur pull Jigglypuff out of the hole so that they can continue on. However, Jigglypuff simply continues to go forward without checking the path, and therefore it falls into a second hole that Team Rocket had dug, but thankfully Bulbasaur pulls it out of this one as well. Ash and the gang warned Jigglypuff to stop being reckless and stop moving, but the Jigglypuff just got progressively angrier each time it fell into the hole, so it only inspired it to keep going even further, and this led the Jigglypuff to fall into a third hole, having to be rescued by Bulbasaur for a third time. This in turn just caused it to keep running, but fortunately, Team Rocket had run out of pitfalls at this point, so Jigglypuff didn't run into another hole and simply ran away into the woods, with Ash and the gang deciding to follow it after coming to the conclusion that there was likely no more holes. Team Rocket observed this whole thing go down, and Team Rocket was furious at this point, because yes, while they did intend for Jigglypuff to fall into the hole, they only intended for it to fall into one of them, and then Ash and the gang would fall into the others, and now all of their holes were already uncovered. James then nonchalantly mentions Meowth, wondering where he had went off to after he stormed off, not believing that he would actually stay gone for long, as he usually came back. While James was wondering this, Snubbull was wondering it as well, as she squirmed out of Jessie's arms and went off to go search for him, because Meowth was the only reason why it even wanted to be around Team Rocket in the first place, so if Meowth wasn't there, it didn't want to be there either. This led Team Rocket to chase after the Snubbull. Meanwhile, Meowth was walking along a path, alone, instantly regretting his decision to leave. Although he did hate the Snubbull, he hated a life without Team Rocket even more, so he decided that he was going to go back, convincing himself that Jessie and James would happily welcome him back once they realized that they needed him to say part of their motto all the time, and if they couldn't do their motto, then they'd be absolutely furious, and they'd ask for him back, right? He then looks behind him in hopes that Team Rocket had realized this, but no one was behind him. Team Rocket still hadn't come for him. This just led his initial anger with Team Rocket to come back, stating that if they really didn't care about him enough to come looking for him, then maybe it was best that he left after all. Though it was clear that he was still having second thoughts, because he wouldn't keep switching around if he didn't. Meanwhile, Ash and the gang had caught up to Jigglypuff, and they were still helping it look for its microphone, though admitted that they probably weren't going to find it, as they had seemingly looked fucking everywhere in the forest at this point. As Jigglypuff heard their doubts, this just caused it to get even more sad, at the fact that it probably would never see its microphone again. Jigglypuff was so sad that it could barely even walk anymore, so after only walking a little bit further, it stopped in the middle of the road, where Meowth happened to also be sitting in sadness as well, due to not having anywhere to go. This road happened to be very close by to Onyx Tunnel, but Meowth didn't want to go through, as he was still scared of the Onyx, so he was simply just sitting there in sadness. However, after noticing the Jigglypuff sit next to him, they began to talk, explaining to each other their reasons for being sad. Jigglypuff explaining about its lost microphone, and Meowth complaining about its situation with Team Rocket, with Meowth coming to the conclusion that no one seemed to care about Pokemon's feelings anymore, mainly referring to Jessie and James. Meowth then told Jigglypuff that even though their lives sucked, that just meant that they should focus on making their dreams a reality, leading the Jigglypuff to reveal its dream of having an audience listen to its song all the way through. Yeah, I doubt that was going to be possible, Jigglypuff. Jigglypuff was so passionate about this idea, however, that its eyes were glowing, and Meowth realized that Jigglypuff's glowing eyes reminded him of the moon that he liked to stare at from the rooftops. Remember that one from his backstory episode? Yeah, that's the one we're talking about. Anyways, seeing how passionate Jigglypuff was, Meowth then decided that he should actually make his words mean something, as he suggested that him and Jigglypuff form their own team, known as the Dream Team, since he was no longer a part of Team Rocket, and he wanted to be a part of a group effort. Right as Jigglypuff was about to agree, though, and the Dream Team was going to become a reality, Snubbull then arrived and proceeded to bite down on Meowth's tail, with Jessie and James close behind. This causes Meowth to immediately forget about the whole Dream Team idea, and assumes that Jessie and James had come back to look for him, just as he'd hoped, but Jessie and James revealed that they were in fact only here because they were chasing after Snubbull. Before Meowth can react to this, Jigglypuff had spotted the Snubbull, and more specifically, its microphone in Snubbull's hand, so it proceeded to tackle the Snubbull, and the two of them began to get into a scuffle, with Jigglypuff wanting its microphone back, but Snubbull refusing to let it go. This fight eventually escalated into a full-on slapping contest, as Snubbull and Jigglypuff both used double slap on each other. As if the situation wasn't crazy enough, Pikachu was also hiding in a nearby bush, spying on the whole situation, and once he saw it escalate into a fight, he immediately ran over to get Ash. As the fight continued to get more intense, Jessie and James ordered Meowth to try and break it up and help the Snubbull. Meowth certainly didn't want to help the Snubbull by any means, as he wanted to see Jigglypuff absolutely beat the shit out of it. However, he didn't want to see Jigglypuff get injured either, so he partially accepted Team Rocket's request, not helping the Snubbull, but at least trying to break up the fight. However, Jigglypuff and Snubbull were so caught up in the fight that they ended up dragging Meowth in as well. Just then, though, Pikachu returns with Ash, and Ash is successfully able to break up the fight by forcibly separating Jigglypuff, Meowth, and Snubbull. Misty and Brock then follow Ash closely behind, and when they show up, Jessie and James are glad to see Misty, doing their motto and stating how they were going to steal Misty's water Pokemon so they could successfully go through Onyx Tunnel. Midway through the motto, Meowth gets excited since his part was coming up, meaning that Jessie and James would realize how crucial Meowth was to Team Rocket. However, right before Meowth could jump into the motto, Wobbuffet then came out of its Pokeball and cried its name. Jessie and James take this as a replacement for Meowth's part in the motto and state that it actually sounded better overall, implying that Meowth was now kicked out of the motto and they were going to use Wobbuffet instead. Meowth was obviously devastated by this. I mean, doing the motto was his fucking life, and now he was essentially kicked out of it in favor of a Wobbuffet who all he said was fucking Wobbuffet. Like, at least Meowth had an actual line. Anyways, while Meowth was now once again worried of his position in Team Rocket, Jessie then sent out her Arbok with the motto done, leading Misty to try and send out her Staryu to battle the Arbok, but of course, Psyduck popped out instead. Team Rocket was pissed off, as they were hoping that Staryu would get released, since Staryu was an actual good water Pokemon. Misty was pissed off too, so she recalled Psyduck into its ball and instead sent out her Poliwag, which was able to knock out Jessie's Arbok with a water gun, after dodging Arbok's tackle. With Arbok down, James then sent out his Victory Bell, who of course tried to eat him as usual. To counter James's Victory Bell, Ash sent out his Chikorita. But Victory Bell was more interested in Poliwag due to having the type advantage on it, so it used Razor Leaf on Poliwag. However, Chikorita was able to butt in time and save Poliwag from getting hit by using Vine Whips to deflect the attack. Chikorita then finished Victory Bell off with a Razor Leaf, and since Poliwag was free from Victory Bell's torture, it was able to use Double Slap on Arbok. With Arbok down, Jessie decided to send in her Wobbuffet, and Wobbuffet proceeded to use its counter ability to deflect several of Chikorita's attacks, including a Vine Whip. Poliwag then stepped in and used Water Gun on Wobbuffet though, which broke through its counter due to it being a special move, and sent Wobbuffet flying back into Team Rocket, Victory Bell, and Arbok in the process. With all of Team Rocket down, Pikachu then took the opportunity to use a Thunderbolt, which sent Team Rocket blasting off, including Meowth, but with the exception of Snubbull. However, after seeing Meowth get blasted off, Snubbull did want to be with Team Rocket, so it immediately ran after them, tossing the microphone aside, so it could use both of its hands to go full speed. With the microphone dropped, Jigglypuff happily picked it up and began to sing yet again, as it got onto a nearby ledge. As Ash and the gang fall asleep, Ash remarks how it was getting pretty tiring to keep falling asleep in the same episode, or same day, whichever you prefer. Also, what the fuck was that pun? That was so bad. Of course, after seeing Ash and the gang fall asleep, Jigglypuff gets mad and scribbles on their faces as usual, and proceeds to go looking for someone else that would actually stay awake for its song. It ends up wandering into the Onyx Tunnel, where it runs into the same 3 Onyx that Team Rocket had run into earlier. Seeing them as its new audience, Jigglypuff began to sing yet again, putting the Onyx to sleep as well, leading Jigglypuff to scribble on their faces and continue onwards some more. Eventually, Ash and the gang woke up and finally made their way to the Onyx Tunnel, and immediately upon entry, they spotted the 3 sleeping Onyx, with scribbles on their faces, leading them to come to the conclusion that it must have been Jigglypuff's doing. They took it as Jigglypuff's way of thanking them for helping it find its microphone, when in reality, Jigglypuff was fuming at them due to them falling asleep. Ash and the gang then passed through Onyx Tunnel so that they could continue on with their journey. The episode then ends with one last scene from the reunited Team Rocket as Meowth had officially rejoined. They were walking through Onyx Tunnel yet again, hoping to not encounter the Onyx, so they treaded very carefully. However, Jessie unfortunately tripped over a rock, and the noise alerted the sleeping Onyx and caused them to wake up and surround Jessie and James. Damn.